Hi there. If you're watching this video, it's likely that you've already purchased our Elite 1 fender eliminator or are interested in purchasing it and wanting to use either your OEM signals or our TST LED rear pod turn signals for the Yamaha R7. I do just want to mention we have gone ahead and changed this closeout. Now we are still selling some of the original aluminum CNC machine anodized black closeouts, but as they are sold, they will be discontinued and we will be replacing it with an ABS injection molded plastic closeout. We made this change in order to make installation easier. The finished look is a million times better as we've been able to texture and color match this piece to the surrounding body panels on the underside of the Yamaha R7. And there's also some weight savings. So we're really excited. We hope that you all enjoy this new closeout. The overall installation method and what is going to be shown in this video will be exactly the same, with the exception of the closeout changing. And if there's a chance you are using the new ABS injection molded plastic closeout, please note you are not to use Loctite on this closeout. It can deteriorate the plastic if it off-gases incorrectly and can cause damage and potentially complete failure of this piece. We do recommend using a non-anaerobic thread locking agent such as Vibratite in order to secure any components to this assembly. Thanks, and I hope you guys enjoy this video.
Hey, what's up you guys? Bart here. Welcome to TST Garage. In this particular video, we'll be focusing on the rear signaling options that we currently offer in the early 2022 stages for the Yamaha YZF R7. Behind me, you see a blue version of that bike. It's mostly stock for now. We did outfit it with our fender eliminator already, and we also took care of the front signaling on it via our Halo GTR signals. In this video today, we will discuss several different options that we have to offer currently for this bike in the rear, and subsequently we will show you how to install each version on the bike. Now, I can make this a very long video by showing you the details of every single component. I think what I'll do for now is when we get into the installation process, I will pre-configure one side so you see what we're working with, and then show you the process of getting to that point from the raw components that you see on the table here. Now, all of these are separate kits. First, before we get into that, I would like to talk to you about the different options of fender eliminator that we have, and we already have videos for them. It's just worth mentioning a couple of the nuances before we get into the installation of the signals. What you see here is our closeout. This closes out the hole left behind by the fender and serves as a base for some of these fender eliminator assemblies. The low mount fender eliminator is just what it suggests. It mounts the license plate here, and the closeout just closes out the hole left behind by the fender. These two systems mount right here. You actually see our Elite 1 adjustable mounted in this position. It mounts to the two holes in here in the closeout. Whether you pick this or this, the installation of our signaling equipment is exactly the same. So I will just breeze through one of them and then show the details on the other. Well, first, you'll see that we already have mounted the OEM signals to the system via our OEM signal replacement bracket set. Now, this bracket comes with the actual bracket itself and fastening hardware that replaces the hardware that fastens one of these two bracket systems to the closeout. It basically just sandwiches in here in between the closeout and our license plate bracket. It provides the same geometry hole that the OEM Yamaha uses for installing their signals. Now, as you can imagine, if you're reinstalling OEM signals, they are still wired with the OEM connectors, and that's a very simple install. You just route it through I'll show you how, plug it in, you're good to go. Our closeout has 2 reliefs through the cosmetic surface that lead to the inside under the bodywork, and that enables you to route your wiring to the inside of the bike without any snags. That's super easy, and I do have to say the new Yamaha signals are pretty nice. They are LED type signals. They have a nice, stylish, elegant design. They are quite large. That may throw some people, and this is where the customizers will want to probably change that. We do like these, but we do offer some alternate technology. In front of me right here on the table, you'll see several different types of signals that we here at TST Industries manufacture and sell. The simplest one being the Aero 18 standard LEDs on board, nice brightness, shape like an arrow, and they also have the ability to deflect should you throw your leg over to mount the bike and hit it with your boot, or just brush up against something in your garage. They are very similar to the OEM units in that they will have a little bit of give. Now our BL6 signals, they have 6 SMD LEDs on board, firing through a more sophisticated lens array that take the fewer LEDs and spread them around with ample brightness delivered. They rival the brightness of these, even though they have fewer LEDs. Now these also have a little bit of give. We like to build that into some of our signals so that you are confident in not busting them off in daily use. These have become kind of like our go-to. If anybody asks what I should buy, this is what we recommend. And this is basically because most people just choose that on their own. And they are very nice, elegant, low profile, and have a really, really high brightness output. Now, another version of a pod signal that we do offer is the Echo. It comes with black anodized aluminum body. It does have some nice logo inscriptions in here, little tick marks. It's very elegant, minimal, and it has this nice silver ring that it comes with by default. If you don't like the silver, we do have several different color options that you can change these out to, and then they'll provide a nice accent to what you've got going on in your color scheme on the bike. Now the blue seems to match this blue very, very closely. So when we go to show you how to mount these, I will reconfigure the silver one to show you how to do the ring on the Echo signals. Should you choose to do that, you'll be all hooked up with the process on how to do that. All of these signals that you see here are pod type signals. They will work on the rear, and the smallest of the pod signal types will also work on the low mount version. I'll show you how to get that done. For those of you guys that don't want pod signals and want something more flush, we have a flush mount setup that is mounted on a hinged bracket system that also mounts to the low mount version of the fender eliminator, and that just moves your signaling lower. You do have a very, very bright lamp on each side that will also be able to fire ample brightness output towards the eyes of anybody behind you. They have a broad cone of light, so you're seen from a broad angle, no problem there. These are available in a choice of clear or smoked. The BL6 are also available in a choice of clear or smoked. These are clear only, and because the Echo signals don't have much lens area, they just come clear, just to provide the most ample brightness output that we could possibly pack in there. Now, not to worry, these do have one single LED inside the capsule, but it is a super high powered LED that is pulse width modulated. So we're able to get more brightness out of it than had we just pushed DC through there. That, coupled with firing the LED through this lens, produces a very nice light output, very bright, good cone size area. If you do want more brightness, I do recommend some of these other options, but this is definitely adequate according to me. All right, now I've shown you all the different nuances of the different lighting that we offer. Now, how do we attach the lighting to the bike, and how do we power it? Let's do the simpler consideration first. How do we power it? All of our signals come pre-wired with 3.5 millimeter bullet connectors. This is kind of an industry standard. Most companies, including ours, install males on the lighting equipment and females subsequently on connectors. Here what you see is our harness converter Basically, the function that it serves is accepting these bullet connectors with the same color scheme, black to black, yellow to yellow, have little insulating caps, and then they terminate in the appropriate OEM connector for the other side. You may ask, why did we not pre-wire the signals with the OEM connector? Well, we sell these signals for many different motorcycle types, and instead we chose to offer different versions of the harness converters that will couple the signals with the motorcycle. Very simple, routed the same way as you would with the OEM setup, right through these reliefs, plug it in, good to go. Now, for the actual physical mounting, there will be some differences from the rear mount to the low mount. Let's do the rear mount first. It's pretty simple. We offer a pod signal mounting kit that consists of 2 of these L brackets that are slotted on one side and have a nice hole on the other side, along with the appropriate hardware for your bike. Slotted part typically goes in between the license plate and the license plate bracket. Should you choose the adjustable or the static, it doesn't matter. You could get your signals behind or in front of the license plate. Choice is yours. You could also reverse the slotted with the hold features, and you could get a different dimension stick out from your license plate. That's really up to you. I'm gonna do it the way I do it every single time. You guys can choose to adapt that method. Now that works for all the pod signals. I mentioned that the echo will work on the rear mount or the low mount. You basically reverse the stick out direction to the rear of the license plate and mount your echo in here and point it, and that will do the job just right. Now I'll show that in detail later. Right now, let's just go over the last nuance here. So the low mount, flush mounted version requires the build of 2 bracket systems that consist basically of 2 of these guys, sandwiched like this with some hinge hardware. I will show you how to build that on the bike. It's also very simple if you just use my methods. I think I'm pretty much done yapping here. This was a long intro, sorry guys. Let's get to wrenching. I'm really excited about that. Let's get it going and we'll start on the rear version. As you can see, I'm already holding the OEM fender here in my hand. Everything is off the bike, allowing us to execute the installation of these systems on the bike. If you are unsure on how to get to here, the actual detailed steps are contained within our fender eliminator videos. Each one of those videos is catered to the different types of setups that we show, but it ends up being here in this stage before we proceed to installing anything else. So if you are installing one of our signal sets on the bike, it is at this point that you would interject with installing the signals on the license plate bracket hardware so that the rest of the installation is nice and easy and successful. All right, first what we'll have to do is consider what happens to the signals once we take them off to get them back onto this setup. Here I'm holding our Elite One adjustable setup. It comes with these screws that mount it to the closeout. Those will go away, and the screws contained in the OEM signal bracket will replace those 2 fasteners, and now we will basically just sandwich this bracket in between this setup and this setup. On this particular setup, the threads are in the hinge bosses, so we will be dropping the screw from the top side of the closeout to the bottom side, and as you can see, it protrudes. We will take our OEM signal bracket and superimpose the slot onto this screw. Now, if you notice here, there is a beaked feature here in the closeout, and there is a feature here that has a hole through it. Notice the teardrop shape, smaller diameter of that is towards the hole containing feature, and the larger diameter is towards the beak. This is the rear of the bike. Now, I'm gonna align my threads here with the receiving threads. If you are using a license plate light, I advise that you thread the wire through first, because it will be very difficult to do that afterwards. What you see me using here is our low profile license plate light. There's a module that we offer. Highly recommend picking that up as well. All right, so now we have that in position. I'm gonna return to that pre-superimposed state of my fastener and bracket, then line up my thread and use a 5mm Allen to start that thread. Repeat the step for the other slot. Now I don't tighten anything down just yet. I just get the threads engaged and make sure that this whole system is not too sloppy. I'm going to take up some of the slack in my wire, being sensitive to the amount of adjustment that I may have in this system should I choose to adjust the angle. And that looks about right to me. I like to leave just a little bit of slack here. And now all that remains to do is to balance the side-to-side symmetry of the bracket and then cinch down on the bolts. Now, this is pretty easy because our slots will appear on the inside of these hinge bosses, and all you have to do is get it to be symmetric. Same amount of slot showing through the inside here, and then slowly take that down to tightness. And if you are doing this with this entire setup already pre-assembled, then you don't have to really do much to hold the bosses while you rotate the screws. If you are still building this because you've chosen to do this out of sequence, make sure that you use a 10mm box wrench on the hinges themselves to prevent them from rotating while you rotate in and tighten these socket cap screws. All right, now we have our signal bracket on the fender eliminator assembly. We will need to get into here, remove some of these panels to free up the wires, and then subsequently remove the signals off of this whole assembly. I'm gonna grab a 4mm Allen. Using that 4mm Allen, I will remove these 4 fasteners that'll split all these parts apart. All of those components are no longer used. Now we gain access under here. We're gonna free the wiring from the channeling, cable management features, split them all apart, and then we look at what we have here. This gray plug, license plate light wire, we will not consider this in this video. Then we have 2 wires here, one of them being longer and black, one of them shorter and being white. White is for the right side signal. Memorize that. All right, so on the inside here, it's tough to show. I will take this apart and then show you how it works. There is a jamming component that jams a rubber boot in place and prevents the signal from coming out until you exert enough force on that signal to come out. So this is for the purpose of the signal falling out in case you smash into something in your garage or on the road, and prevents the signal from breaking. These signals are something like $80 and very tough to get nowadays in 2022. So that is actually good. You could always replace it in place after it falls out from a hit and be safe. Now, once we take it out, I can show you how this is done. So you have a window here and interference geometry that fits through and out, and this jamming component goes in and fits into these windows, and that prevents that from coming out until you exert enough force. This is doubled up here actually, so once this black piece comes out, there's another white piece inside that's jamming it inside this extension boot. I'm just gonna brute force it out. I'm gonna remove the white piece. I am going to take the white piece off and then also get rid of this rubber boot. We're going to a low profile setup We don't want this to be sticking out as far. You can potentially still make use of this extra length extension if you want with our setup. There's nothing preventing you from doing that. In my particular installation, I will be using just a signal and its own jamming component. Repeat the steps on the other side. All right, here we go. So, like I said, the white plug is for the right side component. Right meaning rider direction is this way, so right is on this side. And this is black, the opposite side. We will feed the connector and wire through from the outside to the inside. Make sure that our jamming component goes through. When we get to the base here, you'll notice that there is a split in this rubber boot. That is supposed to go in at the very end. So we start with the smaller diameter of the teardrop. Get that fitted in, make sure the groove fits into our bracket, engage it halfway, and then work the other side all the way to that split that I indicated previously. You can use a tiny flathead screwdriver to help yourself if you get impatient, but just by hand works pretty well. And then we will engage that jamming component into that boot and its windows in the reverse order of what I showed you to be the disassembly. Voila, this is ready to go. I'm going to perform the same steps on the other side of the bike. All right, so now we have the entire assembly of fender eliminator, license plate bracket, license plate light, and our signals all ready to go. What do we do about routing the wires in? Like I mentioned in my intro, we did cut reliefs into here, and those interface with the aft end of our undertail panel, creating just enough gap to route these wires through, nice and neat, and clamp them in place so they don't move around too much, and they don't really leave too much space in between for water to pass. So we're good there. At this point, you would take this entire assembly, get it onto the bike, get the wires fed through that window that is left behind by the removal of the fender, and the rest of this assembly will basically be what I already covered in our fender eliminator installation video when we go to assemble on here. The only nuance to that is that you have to plug in your signals, and that is very, very simple. You basically just plug them in where the OEM signals went, white to white, black to black. As I mentioned earlier, the black one is a little bit longer, and it goes into this compartment here under the driver's seat. The white one remains over here under the ECU. That's pretty much it. I'm gonna tear this down and we're gonna get into the actual method of installing our TST Industries pod signals on the rear mount version. All right, for the TST Industries pod signal installation, we're gonna start from a system that has been built using the instructions contained in our fender eliminator video, whether you're using the static standard, Elite one, or the adjustable from this point forward is identical. So we're just gonna focus on one. Like I promised in the intro, I pre-configure one set and I show you how to configure it to this doneness in this process on the table, and then we take it over to the bike and install it there. What you see here is our BL6 signal. Essentially, what we have here are several different types of signals that we offer. Small nuance between these is the Aero 18 has a 10mm stud, whereas these two have an 8mm. The hole on our pod signal mounting kit accepts either one, no big deal. What I'm gonna do is show you the installation of the BL6 because it is actually the same exact installation of any one of these. It doesn't make any sense to show you all the different ones. They're just gonna repeat. So let's just choose the BL6 because that is the most commonly sold signal here at TST Industries. And then Let's talk about that. I mentioned this in the intro. We do have bullet connectors here, and for the purpose of plug and play installation, we will be using our harness converters that terminate in the appropriate Yamaha plug. Here we have our pod signal mounting kit. It comes in a baggie with all the hardware and L brackets. This is what it looks like when you empty it out. You have one bracket for left, one bracket for right. Let's just separate it into half since I already have this here. All right, so for one side, you will need 2 washers, screw, nut, and a bracket. You will need your signal. We're gonna remove the hardware from the stud. Consists of the nut and washers. Clear them off the connectors. And then make sure that you choose the appropriate signal. We do have our logo and company name inscribed on the back of this. It is supposed to be upright and legible. Another telltale sign is top of the lens has curvature to it. The bottom of the lens, clear part, is flat. So this curved feature will go to the top. We will make sure that our L bracket is oriented the appropriate way. And I've chosen to use the hole, the round hole side for the stud. For certain installations, I do reverse that. Whenever I need the stud axis offset from the license plate farther, I will reverse this and basically make up that difference in distance like you see here. That's up to you. Now, let me get the washers back on. Once the nut goes back on, we can engage that thread. And the final adjustment of the hanging angle here, I like to perform that while I have this on the bike. For now, I'm just gonna kind of eyeball it and then just give it a little snug. Like I said, we're gonna tighten it fully on the bike. So now we have these 2 sides ready to go. You can potentially put the L bracket behind your license plate bracket. I like it, for this setup, I like it in between, so that's where I'm gonna put it. Now we have screw, washer, license plate, L bracket, license plate bracket, washer on the back, and nut on the back. And do that for both sides. All right, let's get it done. I always like to stress this one point in my installation procedures. We do not want to tighten anything fully just yet at this point. We want to leave ourselves a little bit of adjustability. When we get this on the bike, we will do the final adjustment of the angles and make sure everything is sitting symmetrical from the center plane of the bike. Everything's level. And then we will tighten everything down. So what I like ultimately is to have everything in kind of the position that I envision it in, and then snug it up to the point where I can still move it around, but it's not sloppy. All right, this is looking pretty good. Now, I'm gonna get my harness converter on. This is very simple, yellow to yellow, black to black. And we have these insulating caps, but if you notice, they are technically able to slide off. They do a really good job insulating the conductors from touching each other or ground on the bike, but if they slip off, you can cause a short circuit. So what I like to do is lock them in place with a piece of electrical tape. That ensures that I will not be making any contact on these electrical connectors and keeps my electrical system safe. Nice and neat. Here we go. Again, like I showed in the previous segment, with the stock signals, we do have these reliefs here cut in our closeout that are meant for passing the wiring through to the top side of the bike, to the inside of the subtray, subsequently connecting them there. The amount of slack that you leave will basically be determined after you replace all of the body panels on the bike, and you're able to shimmy it in place and make that adjustment for yourself. I recommend that if you are not using any cable ties, you leave about this much slack here once it's on the bike and mounted. If you do like to cable tie it, I like to get all my electrical connections cable tied together, so that would include the license plate light if you are using one. And it would look something like this with my zip cable tie right about in this location here. I'm not going to show you that in this video. These are nuances that are basically personal taste in your own installation. For now, let's just get this transferred onto the bike and quickly cinch it down and tighten it with the appropriate tools. All right, now let's grab all the wires, get them through from the bottom of the subframe to the top here through the same window that the OEM wires come out of. I already have my screws in place here to accept my closeout. Again, all of these actual steps are described and portrayed in our fender eliminator videos. I'm going close to bottom out, but leaving adjustability once again, and the final tightening of the actual closeout happens with the bodywork in place per the instructions in our fender eliminator video. So I'm going to snug it up a little bit more here. On caution, a piece of advice that I want to point out here is that you want to make sure that you don't clamp these wires in place. Make sure that when the closeout and fender eliminator assembly are mounted and snugged up, these wires, these wiring pairs are still able to move in and out. You will make that final adjustment with everything tight and once you're getting the body panel in place. Tiny little nuances, but they will get you the best possible installation and the neatest look. And that's kind of what we're after here. Keeping track of which one is the right signal. It's pretty easy because you can see it pass through. Right, white plug. White plug is contained here under the ECU area. You can just bundle it over and push it back in place. Left one goes to the black plug. That is forward of the seat bracket. They are routed through a series of cable management geometry here. We portrayed that in our other video, so we're going to spare you that. Just make sure it's nice and neat and not up off the surface. The ECU mounts in this area. Once you plug this in, we are ready to test the electrical system here. Make sure that you have flash rate, you have proper flash on each side of this bike. All right, we're looking good here. So now everything's done up there. It's just a matter of making sure that these signals are actually firing parallel to the ground and then aren't some weird mustachy look behind the bike. So I'm gonna tighten all that stuff up. I'm gonna keep inspecting it visually to make sure that I have proper positioning. Since you are using an L bracket here that has a slot, at this point it's a good idea to also make sure that the signals are sitting equidistant from the center plane of the bike, and that's very easy to see because you have the license plate as a reference. All right, I just tightened down this connection. If you're using the hardware that came with our pod signal mounting kit, that's a 4mm Allen and a 10mm open-ended from the inside. I'm going to use a 12mm open-ended wrench for the signal stock 2L bracket connection. Now we are tightening a machine screw thread into a stud that is mounted on rubber that is overmolded over the opposite side. If you were to over tighten this, it'll actually rip out the piece, the hardware piece that is inside that rubber, and it'll damage your signal beyond repair. That's not covered under warranty. That is just mechanical damage caused by improper installation. So I encourage you to pay close attention to that. Once you situate that side, move on to the other side, and the rest of it is essentially all the same. From this point forward, it's just the reverse order of disassembly that we covered in our fender eliminator video. So if you need help with that, I urge you to go check it out there. If you are mounting the echo signals on here and you want to change the ring color, let me just quickly show you how to do that. So here on the table, we have several different ring colors to choose from. I've chosen a blue one already on the other side. So let's go along with that motif. You're gonna need to remove the cap. The cap's off the lens. Be careful to have this over some kind of a surface where you could catch components in case they fall out. The lens element comes out, and then we will need to take that ring off. There is an O-ring here that needs to be taken off first. That is jamming the ring in place, and also it insulates the capsule from water entry. What I'm using here is a tiny pick to slip this O-ring off. You can use a sewing needle, safety pin, or something like that. Make sure you don't lose it. You want to replace that on there because that is what ensures that water doesn't come in. And on the way back in, it's very, very simple. You just stretch it over with your hands. Make sure the lens goes back in. All right, and then you tighten down on this connection as far as it'll go down. Make sure it's tight, and then we can bring it back over to the bike here and perform the installation instead of these BL6 signals. Now, like I said before, the actual physical installation and electrical installation is the same, so I'm going to spare you the same steps. I think this is representative enough. All right, the last portion of our video here today will consist of the instructions on how to install this or this signal set on the low mount version of the fender eliminator. Our closeout is already on the bike, and this is the license plate bracket that we use here in this place that is also installed as per the instructions in our fender eliminator video. You can imagine you have your license plate here, and then you will either attach one of these or one of these setups in between the license plate bracket and the license plate. And since this hangs on an angle approximately resembling this setup, you just have to assemble this signal set in a way that will have center axis of your LED firing along the ground. So with all that information there, I just want to show you how to pre-configure either this setup or this setup. For this, we have a half kit. This is already pre-configured from this kit. We have all the other components here that will make this setup, and then we'll show you that on the left side of this bike. Here, we'll use this to build on the right side, and then you guys can figure out which one you want to go with before you commit to a purchase. Now, again, like the previous version of install, we do have our harness converters. We are not going to pre-build these onto the signal set because of the scheme of routing the wires up from the bottom to the top of the sub tray. We will need to make sure that these are just the bullet connectors and have low bulk. these connectors would just not fit through. So we'll get those through, then wire them up on the bike, and then we'll proceed from there. All right, so quick note here, I'm not gonna show this in detail because I already demonstrated it for the BL6 signals in the previous section here of this video. We're basically attaching our signal to either the round hole or the slotted side. We will determine that when we get on the bike. I will most likely make use of the round hole, but I have to make sure that we have enough clearance around this brake fluid reservoir. So we will make that determination while we're on the bike. Again, this will point aft of the actual bracket. Previously on the rear version, we had it pointing to the front, but for this particular setup, we will have to make sure that it points to the rear. That's the easy part there. This is also easy, just a couple extra steps. Like I said, we're gonna build a half kit. I've pre-configured this. I'm basically going to show you how to configure all these components into that. The washer and the nut here are for this connection. We have a white nylon shoulder washer that makes our hinge point from one side to the other. Then we have a washer, a screw, and then washer and nut. The nut will take a 10mm tool, either socket, open-ended, or box, and this head takes a 4mm Allen. The way this works is we will exert pressure on the plastic shoulder washer. Just have to make sure everything's concentric when we are building it, otherwise it won't fit through well. I just messed it up, so I'm gonna have to back up a little bit. So for success, we need to make sure that we are protruding the plastic shoulder washer out of the hole in this L bracket. And then, only then do we get that down to being snug. Now, the fastener pair becomes snug before the actual L bracket pair becomes snug, and that's because there's extra length in the nylon element for the purpose of sandwiching it and then finally pressurizing it and expanding it to create enough friction so that under road vibration, this doesn't move around on you. So you can see here, this is still movable. Once I tighten down on this fastener pair, it becomes immobilized for the amount of load that it experiences. All right, so let's talk about how to attach this. We will need to make sure that one of these brackets is behind the plane of our license plate here. So it's essentially this. We're gonna adjust the final angle on the bike. You can choose to either show the head of the screw to the outside or the nut. The choice is yours. There's really no preferred way of orienting this. We get our signal mounted from the back side, like so. Nylon washer, nylon flat washer, nylon nut. Now we do have a slotted connection here, but we are trying to keep this as inboard as possible because passenger feet do go here in this area and we want them to be far away from these signaling components. So make sure that this stud and signal are pushed in towards the inboard side of the bike as much as possible. And now this is ready to go on the bike. We will make the final adjustment while it's on the bike. All right, let's get going. As promised, we will be starting with the echo signal on the right side, and then subsequently we will mount the flush mount version on the left. Here, as you can see, I like working with the license plate already in place, just one fastener removed, holds it for me right there. Let's determine which orientation we're gonna install this in. Like I said, you could go the tabbed and slotted version or the round hole version. I think here we just don't have enough room to clear the aft section of the signal around the reservoir. So our method around that is to have the tab stick out, and instead of being mounted in between the license plate and its bracket, we're gonna go on the outside, and that should give us enough clearance. So let's go and pre-install this signal on here. And that did the trick. We have no contact, although it is pretty close. So now I'm just going to use the hardware that is provided in our pod signal mounting kit to get this fastened through. I should note that if you want to delete this reservoir, we do offer a reservoir delete kit that is essentially a tube that contains the fluid within it, and you can just zip tie it off to the back side of here, and all of this goes away along with its bracket. So there's one consideration that is not for everyone. Typically it's racers that use it. It's extra cost for not much benefit, but it's up to you if you like it. So what you guys see here is actually, I would say most people would agree, it's a bit crude. There's no two ways about it. These are crude kind of solutions to having signaling here. And like I said in my intro, it's early 2022. The bike kind of just surfaced on the market late last year, and we have not had enough time to design a proper signaling setup and manufacture it. Now we are actively pursuing the design of a proper tail signaling system that is not an integrated tail light, because this unit is very, very slim. I don't feel like it would be best practice to put signals in there. What we're working on is a tail lighting system that fits within the fairings, but it's still too early in the development of that product, so we will not be showing it to you, nor do we really want to announce it fully just yet. Just know that something is coming to replace this system and this system that we are providing for the moment, so that you guys that want the low mount can have some kind of signaling. Now, you saw me put the wiring in here in between this undertail panel, and then subsequently up to the side of the sub tray. At this point, we can connect our harness converter, black to black, yellow to yellow. Again, like in previous installations, we have these insulator caps here. They do slide around, so we do want to lock them down. Electrical tape just basically gets them fixed in position, and that way we won't cause a short circuit. Now this is a right-hand signal, so I am going to plug into the white connector under here. The opposite side is going to go into black. I like to test it out before I move any further. And we have function. All right, I'm not gonna bore you guys with the nuances of tightening everything up. It's all the same as I showed you with the BL6 setup in the rear here. Let's just jump right into this configuration here. And for this setup, the wiring is gonna be the same, just on the left side of the bike. So I'm gonna forego that demonstration. All right, on the left side here, we're gonna use this type of a setup. And for this one, I can actually squeeze it in between, so it looks a little bit nicer. And also, the wiring is more concealed behind here, so you don't have to see this wiring just routed through here. I do think that this is a little bit nicer, and if you don't like the clear, you could choose the smoked version, which cuts down on this clear brilliance a little bit. The leftover fastener components from this kit have a screw and washers and all that stuff in place to use here on this connection. Line it up a little bit. Make sure there's friction in there. Then we position it to how we want it. 10mm open-ended on the back. 4mm on the outside here. Tighten it down so it has no possibility of movement. Make sure that the plane that is neutral to the light projection is parallel to the ground. Pretty easy to do as well. And then we're going to tighten this connection down with the same actual tools. Now we are trying to expand that nylon element inside there. All right, that is expanded and fixed in place. Now we'll just have to orient this lamp and then tighten down on that connection. The nut on the back side of this lamp is a 17mm, and we are tightening it onto a stud that has been molded into the capsule. We do not want to overstress that connection. We just want to exert enough pressure on these components so that the friction holds them in place. We do have a nice suspension mount feel to it, so it'll vibrate, but it will not come out of position. Now that this is all cinched down and tight, we're gonna grab the wire and go up through the undertail, up through the sub tray, and perform the same steps to connect our harness converters and then connect it in. I'm gonna test it before I deem this done for our installation procedure purposes. All right. It's all looking good. From this point forward, everything is the reverse order of disassembly. All those steps are contained within our fender eliminator videos and shared also in here somewhat. So I hope you found this informative. Thank you for watching. Check out tstindustries.com. We have all these components ready for you, and in the future, we will also be launching the component I spoke about, the tail signaling. That's still to come. It's early 2022 now. Keep checking back with us. You could also sign up for notifications on any product that is out of stock on our website. Our system will notify you when it's ready to go. Products that we are about to launch, when we develop the ad and it goes live, you could also sign up for that notification. So if you're hopeful on that tail signaling system, keep checking back with tstindustries.com and we'll get you covered. See you later.